and I just didn't know if I could do this, or what to say, or even where to begin. I thought about everything Jeannie was and how much she meant to me, and then the strangest thing popped into my head. Jeannie had no teeth. She had not one tooth in her head. As long as I remember, Jeannie was toothless. So I asked my mom, and she said that Jeannie had not had teeth since my mother had been a little girl. My mother is in her mid-50s, so I imagine that Jeannie had not had teeth for at least 40 years. And Jeannie always had the same pair of dentures. That means that her dentures were at least 40 years old too. I was amazed at the fact that, and it was something that I never thought of, she took really good care of those dentures. In her bathroom, there was always a blue bottle of tooth powder sitting on her sink, and she would tenderly brush those dentures, which is incredible because I can only wish that I looked half as good at 40 as Jeannie's dentures did. I never asked how she lost her teeth, but I always imagined that Jeannie lost them in some crazy bar fight because that's the kind of chick she was. And she worked at a bunch of bars, so it wasn't out of the realm of possibility. And that made me laugh. And that's who Jeannie is. She was a funny woman who laughed at everything and was toothless and could possibly get into a bar fight. I wrote a show about my life and performed it in various places. In this show, I tell the story of how I came to be who I am and how I learned to love myself. That doesn't sound like a big deal, but to learn to love yourself is one of the hardest things to do.
Amen.
In this show, I tell the story of my grandmother, who I would stay with on Friday nights, and then we would go into town, as she would call it. She would run errands and then take me to Burger King and then to Newberry's to pick out a toy and have a snack at the lunch counter. One day I had to go to the bathroom so bad I didn't think I was going to make it, and I was mortified that I was going to have an accident. I was frantic. I didn't want to pee in front of the people, and I didn't want Jeannie to be mad at me. She looked at me and said, "You piss your pants if you have to. If people don't like it, they can look the other way." There was so much wisdom in that one moment that it stayed with me these years later. Here I am, 37 years old, and I live in New York City. I teach children with severe behavior problems in the Bronx, and I pay $2,000 a month in rent. But it was that one moment, a moment I shared with my grandmother over 30 years ago that stuck with me and influences everything that I do. I tell outlandish stories to all my friends about my grandmother. I embellished here and there just to make the situation bigger, but at the core of those stories, the truth was Jeannie was one of the funniest people that I know. She loved life and she enjoyed laughing. She's where I get my sense of humor from, how I can even laugh in the saddest of situations. It's a joy that lived inside of her and inside of me and the rest of our family. When my paternal grandmother died, Jeannie and Johnny came to her funeral. Jeannie said that she was amazed at the celebration and atmosphere of the service. People singing, people testifying, people celebrating the life of my father's mother and the amazing woman that she was. Later, Jeannie told me that is how she wanted her funeral. She wanted a celebration and not for people to get mired down in sadness. She said, "People know how to have a funeral." And this is how she said it.
Amen.
Anytime Jeannie would say the word black to me, she whispered it as if I was shocked that there were other black people in the world. Once she told me she had new neighbors and they were black. I told her she didn't have to whisper because I'm sure they knew they were black. We laughed and laughed and she told me the same thing that she's told me for years. "My God, Carter, you lost your damn mind." We also had a joke about me being the black sheep of the family, literally. Last Saturday, I went out to alleviate the pit of grief that I was feeling. In honor of Jeannie, I went to a bar and I had about 8 whiskeys. I was with friends telling them about how crazy my grandmother was, and we were laughing and drinking and having a good time, much like I'm sure Jeannie would have wanted. A drag show was going on, and the drag queen walked up to us and asked what was so funny. My response, "My grandmother just died," and we broke out into more laughter. She was really that kind of broad. Brass, loud, funny, and knew how to have a good time. Some of the most amazing times of my life I had with Jeannie. Spending the night at her house, Christmases, other holidays, or just spending time with her at their school, eating the fruit filling out of the middle of Hostess pies, and watching cartoons, waiting for my mom and dad to pick us up. There's so many stories that I could tell about Jeannie, but I wanted to make sure I shared stories that would bring insight into the person she was. I thought about Jeannie in heaven, and I knew when she finally made it up there, I knew the first person she saw wasn't her mother or even her brothers and sisters. The first person she saw was a creature that tormented our lives for years. That would be the dog that she loved and was crazy about, Floppy. I can't consciously talk about the memory of Jeannie without giving a shout out to good old Floppy. The dog was a menace to society. The fat, wiener dog was all teeth and bark, but she loved him, even though he drove the rest of us crazy. He would chase my Aunt Bobby into bed so she would have to run and jump in as he snapped at her feet. Bobby would jump into bed and knock the slats out, which in turn would have Jeannie cussing and fussing up a storm. Not a Floppy, mind you, but a Bobby for jumping into bed. Floppy was a dog that never ate dog food, but whatever we had for dinner that night, Floppy did too. He was spoiled and he was rotten, but no one better lay a hand on him. Once when Jeannie wasn't looking, my father took the roll of newspaper to Floppy and smacked the bejesus out of him. Jeannie was none the wiser, but Floppy never bothered my father again. And Jeannie was Jeannie to me and my sister. She was Mamaw to Rob, and Maw, finally Grandma, to Jordan Kendall, and eventually Riley, Peyton, and Sydney. I always called her Jeannie because her mother, my great-grandmother Mabel, lived across the hall from her down on Court Street, and it made no sense to call two people the same name, so Jeannie became Jeannie, and Mabel became Grandma. And the word Jeannie took this magical tone. I knew if I was going to see Jeannie, I knew the world would be okay. And if you knew Jeannie, you knew that she had a mouth like a sailor. And some of the things that would come out of her mouth would make a longshoreman blush. And she was brilliant at it. She had been a smoker since she was 13, and she had this raspy quality that once she finished cussing you out, you stayed cussed out. It was truly an art form. I can't say her favorite word because I'm respectful being in a house of worship, so I'll say it in Spanish, Mama Huevo. She used this one word in such a way that was beautiful. I've learned to appreciate it, and if I get cut off in traffic, have to deal with a particularly nasty individual, or if the bagger at the grocery store smashes my bread, I let this word fly and think fondly of my foul-mouthed grandmother. I remember her teaching my cousin Rob how to flip people off and drop the F-bomb when he was mad. After he would do it, she and her dear friend Willie would sit back and laugh in her raspy way. That's Jeannie's legacy to us, her humor and her love. I look around the room and I see Jeannie everywhere. I see her in the strength and the fortitude of my own mother, Joanne, and the humor and laughter of my Uncle Johnny, and the fierceness and devotion of my Aunt Bobby, and each of her grandchildren, myself, my sister Keisha, and my cousins, Rob, Jordan, and Kendall, little pieces of her color everything we do and everything we are. And the next generation, her great-grandchildren, Riley, Peyton, and Sydney may not get a chance to grow up with her like we did, but she will be with them as they grow older, as we remind them how great their grandmother truly is. I could stand here for hours and tell you stories, as I'm sure the rest of the family could too. I know that we all loved and cherished her, even if we didn't say it all the time. We loved her, even at those times when she wasn't the easiest person to love, which is a true Boston trait. An ex-in-law once said that if he had a choice of swimming through shark-infested waters or being stuck on an island with my grandmother, my mom, and my aunt, he would take his chance with the sharks. I am blessed and fortunate to have had 37 years with such a wonderful person. I salute my crazy grandmother who gave me my love for life, whiskey, cold mashed potatoes, liver and onions, chicken liver with the white fat around the edges, all kinds of cakes, cookies, mustard, pickles, and sardines. She gave me my laughter and has created a family that I wouldn't trade for the world, insanity and all. I will continue to tell stories about Jeannie to all my friends. I will tell them how she cussed out people and then would laugh about it, how she scared the holy crap out of me when I was a little kid, but loved me only like a grandmother could, how her family was her world, and how she left a small town in Kentucky because she was just too big for that little city. Jeannie would want us to move forward. She would know that we would be sad, but she would tell us that life is for the living and to move on from the sadness. She would want us to remember her fondly and continue to love each other and help each other with the sadness that fills our hearts, but lack of all the crazy things that she said and did. When I get together with my family, we will be sad that she will not be here physically. But once we start sharing our memories of her and the laughter starts, we will know that those that truly love us never leave our side. Thank you.
Thank you.